I'm your host, Valerie Borgman, and today we're talking with Donna and her sister Sharon. They're recalling the signs their dad needed more care when he lived alone, as well as the amazing experience they had with Francis, the owner of the adult family home they moved their dad to. We're talking electric wheelchairs, their dad's dog Theo, and what it was like for them in the very end.
The fire department, bless their heart, occasionally just drop by just to do a welfare check.
Because he was a frequent flyer, as they would call him.
Hi, and welcome to Desperately Seeking Senior Living, a podcast for sons, daughters, grandkids, and spouses who suddenly find themselves tangled in the search for senior living and care. If you like today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and check out our doable download in today's show notes for a printable summary of the show and a bonus tip from our guest.
I guess if we go back 5 years ago, our dad was living in an apartment on his own. His health was declining and we knew it. And we were trying to find him suitable around the clock care. We would set up appointments for him to go to see housing for independent living, and he would always cancel on them. I don't feel good. I don't want to go, always making the excuses.
Yeah.
We had the VA home care base team assisting with us. Sharon and her son, Joshua, assisting taking care of him. And they did. And as time went on, we, noticed more and more that he definitely needed to run the clock. It was stressing Sharon out. It was stressing Joshua out. Of course, with me 3,000 miles away in Florida, it was totally stressing me.
Yeah. Yes. Sharon, what were some of the things that you and Joshua were doing to help your dad?
It's time consuming. And then when you would bring him something, he didn't want that. He wanted something else. And it was the troubles of going back. And then he wouldn't take his medication like he was supposed to. And he always wanted to go on his own. That was his memory not intact. The paramedics kept saying that you need round-the-clock care. It becomes heartbreaking because then they come after us, for negligent care.
A lot of families worry about that. They really do. And so how did the paramedics get involved? Was he calling or were you guys having to call?
There were days that I was calling because his glucose level would be out of whack because he wouldn't eat anything. And then when he did eat, he was eating sugar or junk food. And that wasn't, healthy for him. Keeping Dad on a strict diet wasn't very easy.
Yes. Especially on his own.
Yes.
Well, also, too, we got the VA provided, or supposedly thought that they had provided him with an alert button that that he could press if he was in danger. Well, we found out for some reason it was never activated on the VA side. So we actually ended up getting him an independent one. Of course, he would hit that button for anything and everything.
Even if it was for the lunch meat that he was feeding Theo, it would be for that. Or when you going to come over, it was like, would you tell my daughter to come over? So, 3,000 miles away, we'd get a phone call from Donna to go over and check on Dad. And it's just like, Dad, are you serious?
This is only set up for emergencies only. And we actually installed a camera in his apartment. It was more to monitor him and make sure
Safety measures,
in case he might have fallen, because he was getting up and going to the bathroom. And the problem is he would fall between the bathroom and the kitchen and you could see him go in, but then you'd have to wait and wonder if he was coming out.
So I think that's such a great idea, though. So you were helping him as much as you could, and then you were getting all these calls from Life Alert, but you set up that camera so you were able to see, is this actually an emergency? Is this not?
Yes.
But of course, we had to
respond to each phone call that they came to us. And it was like, yes, okay, thank you. Sometimes it would be 3 phone calls in an hour, and it's just, Lord have mercy, Dad. But his dementia slowly progressed in some of it. So he wasn't remembering that, okay, you just called me 5 minutes ago, Dad. And then he was calling again. And it was, a rough time for him because losing control and then not having very good eyesight, the overpack of his tiny apartment was just horrendous. And
Oh,
he couldn't move with it. When he fell, he knocked everything down.
because he tended to hoard. And that makes sense when you age, because especially when you have been having things taken away from you when you wish that you had control over it. And that was my problem with our father. Our father was very controlling and he always had to control the situation. And when he lost that control, it was extremely difficult for him to
relinquish that control.
Big time.
yes. And so is that why you think he was hoarding?
I think so. I think it was to keep his stuff feeling closer. But then, also he wasn't taking Theo out enough. So the dog was, had his spots where he was pooping in and urinating, but the apartment smelled like that. He went through one point where he took a pretty good fall and they took him in, and Sharon went in and she just told him, keep him there.
Keep him there, and I hauled everything out.
Oh, you went to his apartment and hauled everything out.
I actually flew out. I helped her. We cleaned up the place,
and recycled the cans of food that were in his cupboard. So before we got that place cleaned out, it was just wow.
But we got it cleaned up and got his bed maneuvered where he felt he was comfortable with the layout. And the home base team came in and they were just totally amazed with how clean the apartment was. And he felt better, and he did a little bit better. The fire department, bless their heart, Station 13, right?
Yes.
Occasionally just drop by just to do a welfare check,
nice.
because they would be in the area and they would just kind of pop in and see how he was doing.
Because he was a frequent flyer, as they would call it.
He'd overcharged the wheelchair, the electric wheelchair, of course, and then his battery would fail.
Phil, you know what it's like trying to push 3,500 pounds with him in it? Yes, he got stuck and they had to call a cab, but, Wheels takes the wheelchair, so we had to manually cut the power off and then push it in. And then, there was times where he wasn't careful with that chair. So when he'd go off the curb, he would flip over in the chair.
Oh, no.
Yes.
The VA had given him 2 chairs. The first chair he actually did really well with because that was early on. And he always made sure when he was out in his chair that he had his safety vest on. He had a flag on the wheelchair so that, tried to make himself visible to people, oncoming vehicles and stuff like this when he was crossing. And I just think after so many falls with that first wheelchair, they gave him such a high-tech wheelchair the second time around. It just was not a good thing.
He thought he had everything intact, and I had to literally call 911. It was like, look, my father, he's in a wheelchair, he's got Theo. And come to find out, he had fallen over.
Oh, my goodness.
He extended the seat all the way up so he could look around to see where he was at. And he ended up falling over. Somebody, some nice, kind person, pulled over and stayed with them till 911 got there and we could get there for him. And it was just like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. Because Sharon went with him. They got the wheelchair. And of course, this is like 6 months he's been without a wheelchair. And he just felt so cooped up that once they got back to the apartment, he took off in that wheelchair and
there was nothing I could do. And the only thing we could think of is because we lived right near in Holly, he was going back to the Holly Street house. And he got himself lost and turned around and, okay, Dad, it's okay. Just stay in this area, please. It was, these were one of the warning signs that, yes, that chair needs to stay in the park.
Today's episode is brought to you by ClearPath Senior Living Solutions. ClearPath helps families find assisted living, memory care, and other resources. Find our contact information in today's show notes.
After the third time, of him falling, and then between the diabetes and the high blood pressure, they said, no, you ladies need to put him in round the clock care.
Right.
That's when we started looking, because his falls were, getting severe.
By the time I, narrowed it down with cost versus, adult family home or a
Facility.
a facility. I mean, I know if we put him in facility care, they basically would have took every bit of money that he had coming in. I would have nothing left for paying his death policy that we were paying on for 5 years. They wanted to list a total, all of your income.
Yeah, the communities that you were looking at, they're very expensive.
Yes, they were. And of course, as he progressed, the cost would go up because
it required more care.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for us, because we're looking at what he had coming in financially. Adult living, I highly recommend.
As long as you can work with the person that's running the home, they're very flexible.
Yes.
Yeah. And where he was at, it was a little bit smaller than some of them. And he was the first at this particular home, which made it even better because Theo got to be there for the beginning.
Theo didn't stay the whole time. Theo ended up becoming a handful.
The caretaker, he actually had a dog too. And my dad wanted to keep Theo on a leash at all times, and it just wasn't mentally good for Theo either.
Where did Theo end up going?
He resides with me.
Oh, good. So you were able to take him.
Yes.
So she's a 3-dog family.
Do you feel like having Theo there in the beginning helped your dad transition into this new environment?
Yes, and I think, Dad actually formed a quick bond with Francis.
And that's the provider.
Yes. They got along fairly well. Theo did transition once we got past the argument of the dog and his nuts being chopped. Sorry to say that.
Oh my gosh, I was going to talk about that too.
Do a lot of editing.
But it's so true. When there are pets involved, it's like you don't even realize what that brings up. And I remember your dad I remember you telling me, oh my gosh, he's going to be so mad that we have to get Theo fixed.
There was quite the confrontation, all the way down to 911 call on that one.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yes. We had his breakthroughs where there was a couple of times the police were called. I mean, I would get calls from the provider, which I expected. And I ended up having to call his home care-based nurses and say, look, I support the caretaker. You need to give me backup because,
his mental state got so frazzled, and he became so high strung that no matter what kind of medication they were giving him, he was breaking through this medication.
And he was actually becoming violent. That was kind of the scary part.
With Theo, that set him off. That was one of those subjects that really set him off.
Yeah.
That was when we knew that Theo had to come back. I mean, I remember following the ambulance out that night, and needless to say, they hit the stop sign and pulled over to the corner because my father was just so erratic, and upset. They had to restrain him.
Wow. And his diagnosis, is it Alzheimer's? Was it Alzheimer's at that point?
No, they never really gave him an official diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia. They just kind of
chucked it up to old age.
Yeah. I think it was more the hospice care that kind of said that's what they concluded. He was never really diagnosed. It was just part of his diabetes, his AFib, and then he had a aortic aneurysm.
Wow.
They found some pulmonary nodes in his lungs, but when they found them, they said it looked benign. So we said, no, let's not even bother testing, getting in a biopsy, because we just didn't want to put him through that process.
And at this point, how old was your dad?
He died
at 85.
so that I would say that's
83,
82, 83, somewhere in there.
So that's a lot to put him through at that age.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't the easiest patient.
And he also had issues with sedation. He would fight it. So trying to sedate him to do anything would be totally impossible.
It was too much stress all the way around. At this point, Dad had no filter.
Sharon needed the sedation.
So this is the point where you're apologizing to everyone,
right? Yes.
So when he moved into Francis's home, did he ever try to leave?
Yes, Dad would try to go out the door at times because he wanted to go. I had to come over a few times, explain to him, well, you just can't take off, if you go to your appointment or if you go this or one of us takes you, then we can. He would, get flustered and be screaming at us all. And he would get to the point where he got tired and go lay back down and everything was fine. It was like nothing ever happened. Okay.
So he would kind of wear himself out a little bit.
He'd take a nice nap and wake up on a different channel. And it was like, wow.
Now, how long was your dad there?
2 years.
2 years. We feel that we got more out of our dad in Francis' care.
Yeah, his last 2 years of life was probably the best quality of life that financially we could have given him. I mean, I know it was his choice towards the end to kind of stop eating within a month or two of his dying. I mean, Francis did everything
right.
He could to try to encourage him to eat more.
Wow.
Yeah.
He didn't care whether it was a sugary thing. If you wanted sugar, I'm going to give you sugar. Because at this point, it didn't matter,
Do you feel like that was a choice that your dad was making, that he was just ready to go?
Yes.
I
think so, because it had been 6 years after our mother had passed. When we decided when Francis told us it was time to bring in hospice care, I said, okay. And I stressed to Francis and also to the people in hospice care saying, look, I wasn't able to be here when my mom took her last breath. I was on an airplane coming from Florida out here when she passed. And that had to put a lot of stress on our older sister, Connie, to handle that. So I felt guilty, about that. I just didn't want that to happen this time. I told my job, I said, I'm going. I went in for a couple of hours that morning, took care of everything. That afternoon, I was on an airplane out here to Seattle, and I got in around 10 o'clock Thursday. So we got to be there for Father's Day with him, even though, he wasn't seeing anything. But it was just the fact that knowing that we were there for him.
Yeah.
And, a couple of days before, because he died June 22nd. And I sat with him the day before, and he was fine, but you could see his breath was rapid. We had the hospice come in, and they administered him a little cocktail so that would help calm him down. And they gave him just very little. We just tried to make sure his lips were moist and got him on oxygen, make it a little easier for breathing, and elevated his bed. The hospice nurse had told Francis that they could administer that
twice a day,
the cocktail twice a day for him to help. And they explained how that, I guess, the above your nose into your forehead, you can see the double lines. And when patients tend to be in pain, they'll scrunch their face and you can see those lines. And so we got that to make him a little more comfortable. Then, my sister, and she brought her son down. And that day, the day of the 22nd, we were all sitting there in the room talking about this and that, reminiscing about different things. Sharon had been kind of in and out running errands, and she came back and says, "Okay, it's about 1:45. Let's all head home, give Francis some space." And when she said, "Everybody, let's go,"
He left with us.
yeah,
Wow.
he was like, "Okay, you said let's go,
Yep,
I'm
I'm
going."
going.
You know,
And he left.
I mean, one of the other patients did indicate that they saw a dark shadow and kind of scared
Oh
her.
my
We
gosh.
believe it was probably his brother
Brother.
Vernon, who had passed when he was in his 50s. He was at a church baseball game and got hit with a baseball in the head and instantly aneurysm. You know, if you had seen what our father looks like now, he lost some 30 some pounds. Oh my goodness.
He went from like a size 41, 42 down to a 36. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even when I got here before Father's Day and I saw him, you know, both Sharon and I were saying, "Dad, if you see the light on the other side, it's okay."
Okay. It's okay to go.
I just feel so sorry for those people that couldn't be with their loved ones when they were
Passing. Yeah.
passing. We've got to be able
To
to,
be, around him, just, processing, knowing that he's leaving, and him making the arrangements he did and planning everything out. It made life so easy. I mean, the process that we're going through has been a lot easier this time than it was with Mom. It was,
well, I think also too, I think people tend to have a different relationship with their mothers than they do with
with
their
their
fathers.
fathers.
So things affect people differently.
Yeah.
Because in a sense, Mom's was a little more sudden, where Dad was a progression of time.
And we're more mentally prepared.
You know, as much as mentally you can be prepared for anybody passing.
I already miss his ornery ways.
You know, since we've been here, we have to go over to Francis. And see him. I'm going to have to send him a text there that, "How are you doing? I miss not talking to you."
I'm reserving my room.
Check out this episode's doable download in show notes for details, including industry terms and definitions we discussed, as well as a bonus tip from our guest. Have questions or your own tips to share? Leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, make it doable.